Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're gonna go ahead and wait until about 2:05 just to give everyone time to join the stream. In the meantime, feel free to grab a drink, grab a snack, use the restroom. You're also welcome to use the chat function to your right of your screen and connect with other attendees. Thanks. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We're gonna go ahead and get started. First, if you haven't done so, please introduce yourself to other attendees in the chat. And then later in the stream today, when we get to the Q&A part, feel free to drop your questions in the chat as well, and then we will show your question on the stream. So today's agenda is going to be introductions about Capital Factory and what the Texas Manifesto is, and then we're going to learn more about Juliana and intro to fundraising and FemTech. So with that being said, I would like to welcome Dr. Brittany Barreto, your moderator for today.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having this. Capital Factory knows FemTech is my favorite thing to talk about. And so before we get Juliana on here, I am just going to take us through some slides to tell, people. I know we have people from all over the world actually joining us today. So I want to tell you a little bit about what Capital Factory is first. So we do a lot of Ask Me Anythings because founders have questions, and hopefully we have answers, or we know the people with the answers. And so we like to host these events. Capital Factory, we are multifaceted. We have events that bring people together from all over the world, but we are based in Texas and we're focused on Texas. And I'll tell you more about that Texas Manifesto in 1 second. But we do offer co-working in Houston, Austin, and Dallas. And we have a community of founders that are just supportive and, just that high energy together. Obviously, that community is actually more connected than ever now in this virtual space. We have mentors. These are over 250 people that have already, built and sold a successful startup in the past. And so they know what your life is all about, all the stresses, all the feels. And so we have some really fantastic mentors. We have an accelerator, VIP accelerator. We help companies, particularly between the seed and Series A stage. If you're interested in the accelerator, I am the Senior Venture Associate in Houston. Happy to answer questions after this event about that. And we have a venture fund. So we do make investments. And the last 5 years, we've been the most active investor in Texas. Our VIP accelerator, again, happy to tell you more after this event, but we are accepting companies on average about 10 per month. And, it's not a boot camp. It's not required, coursework or anything like that. Instead, it's like this lifelong partnership with companies where we provide mentorship and assistance and guidance and introductions to new employees, introductions to new clients to help you scale. We believe in the Texas Manifesto. So there's actually a lot of movement of startups coming from the coasts, moving to Texas now that we are in the new norm of working remote. And so we are connecting the 3 major cities in Texas, Dallas, Austin, and Houston. And we have incredible partners in each of those cities. And when you bring them all together, we can outbeat any Silicon Valley in the world because each of these cities has really unique assets that when we connect them, we're limitless in what we can accomplish. Texas is a great place to start your company. We're super affordable. We have a lot of investment, a lot of capital in Texas. In terms of a 2019 study for affordability, Austin was 1, Dallas was 3, Houston was 6, San Antonio number 8. So it's cheap to live in Texas. And our economy is booming. If we were our own country, we would actually be the 10th largest economy in the world. So in short, Texas is awesome, affordable, growing population, a lot of startups forming and accelerating here. We have a super strong economy. We have a lot of virtual events coming up. So if you enjoy this one today, some other ones I'm really excited about is the Women in Tech Summit next week. So look out for information on that. And we have a few other ones, also Pride Month, Founder Stories, and Tuesday, June 23rd. Love that one as well. Stay involved, subscribe to us, become a member, follow us on all the social channels, and you won't miss any of these events. Let's get to FemTech. I'm so excited. All right. Is Juliana on here?
Here. How are you, Brittany?
Oh my God, we're matching in our little.
Yeah, I know.
We did not plan this.
We coordinated without knowing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I love Capital Factory. I'm a huge fan. I love how you treat women, diversity, and I'm a mentor and I'm also an investor. So
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Well, just to let our listeners know, our attendees, this is an Ask Me Anything, so we do want to ask your questions. But first, we're going to start off with some softball ones, just get us all kind of oriented, because maybe you're showing up to this being like, what is a FemTech? So, Juliana, I would love to just kind of kick us off with some basic questions. First, why don't you tell our audience why you're qualified to talk about FemTech? What's your background?
Anybody who's a woman can talk about FemTech. And I think that's one of the greatest questions you could ask as a first question, because I think a lot of people should talk more about FemTech, but women have been treating FemTech as taboo. And that's why one of the reasons why FemTech is a great area of opportunity, because a lot of women don't dare talking about menopause or vaginal dryness or about tearing at birth, or the fact that we are always like wondering if we're going to have bladder leakages or menstruation leakages. All these things have always been considered like, taboo. We've been ashamed of talking about them. And that's one of the reasons why people never considered there was an area of opportunity. So now people are realizing that many of these things have never received any innovation. Regarding tearing at childbirth, it's happened since ever, and nobody has considered, like Materna Medical is one of the first ones who decided to put together a medical device to prevent tearing at childbirth. Those are things that people will never know. And I remember when we first pitched Materna to an angel group here in Houston, we had put together a slide of how a healthy vagina looked like. And it was just, a black and white slide, and another one with a torn vagina because of childbirth. And it was like mind blowing. And I think people don't realize the damage that childbirth can do to women, and all the repercussions that are like for life, and we had the lead of life sciences mentioned, there's no way we can put that slide in a pitch for an angel network. And I'm like, well, if there's only one slide we should put, it would be this one.
Probably that one. Yeah.
And even women sometimes don't realize how bad it is when you tear at childbirth. So that happens with not only fertility issues that a lot of couples don't dare talking about, anything regarding menopause, of course, all the cancers that women have. And, so I think demystifying all that and being able to talk openly about it means that people will realize how many people are affected by these problems and how big the market opportunity is. And that's the beauty of FemTech.
Yeah, well, I'm really interested in, your experience, because you are a lead investor at the Portfolia FemTech Fund. So
I'm an LP. I've been a lead investor at 3 funds of Portfolia. And let me tell you a little bit about Portfolia first. So Portfolia is a platform of funds, and they have a very different model. It's not like the typical VC where you invest and, you leave all the responsibility to the managing partners. In this case, it's a little bit of a mixture of a VC fund. So the structure is still a VC fund, but all the LPs or investors can actually have a say. Okay. So I would say it's more like a business angel network, and even more further than that, I would say that it's even a movement, because one of the objectives for Portfolia is not only a return on investment, of course, like any VC funds, and actually the 2 first funds for Portfolia, the Rising Type Fund and the Enterprise Fund, were in the top 25 percentile. They've got already 2 exits, and they got like great returns in less than 2 years, a year and a half and a year and 3 months. So what's really has been the objective for Portfolia is to activate more women and diverse investors, because one of the myths of Silicon Valley is that there were not enough women in VC because of a pipeline problem. And you don't want to change things, as you always blame it to the pipeline, right? So we decided to take matters into our own hands, and that's always what we have to do. Don't expect anybody else to fix things for you. Just create the funds you want to see. And I think one of the best things about Portfolia funds is their low ticket size. So it's only 10K to get in. And not only you get a great portfolio that's diversified, but you get to actually listen to pitches on a monthly basis, decide whether you want to be part of not only the deal sourcing, but also the due diligence. And you can be part of the due diligence because, one, you have great insights about the market, the product, anything, but also because you want to learn. So as an LP, you can be as engaged or disengaged if you don't have time. But when you become engaged, you get empowered. And then a lot of the LPs that started as investors in the initial funds, like Rising Tide, became lead investors in some other funds. Portfolia has already 9 funds, but also there's many other funds that have been created by Portfolia LPs on their own. And we had like True Wealth Ventures, the Artemis Fund, many other of the founders of these other funds that have been Portfolia LPs are still Portfolia LPs. So in Portfolia, we had like generic funds, like of course the Rising Tide or the First Step Fund. And then once we've seen that there were such certain trends, we decided to create more specific funds. Like the FemTech Fund has been one of the most successful ones, but we also created the Consumer Fund, the Enterprise Fund, now the Rising America that I'm leading, and it's basically to invest in Black and Brown and LGBT founders or companies that are addressing those markets. And of course, I had to be an LP at the Portfolia FemTech Fund. At that point, I was already being a lead at another fund for Portfolia, and I was also at the Texas Medical Center Venture Fund. So I couldn't be a lead of the FemTech one, and they had amazing leads already, like Christina Jenkins, who's also in the new fund that Portfolia is launching for active aging and longevity, which also is a very big thing for women too, because of course we reach those ages in a higher percentage, and we also take care of the elderly. So and many other great leads like Faz Bashi, who's been leading the life sciences, and he's one of the greatest men championing FemTech in the world, I would say. He's also an Angel Capital Association board passport member, and he's been always leading the syndication for life sciences in this group. So amazing active investors for sure. The FemTech Fund closed their last investment. I think they made around 9 different investments, and it was such a success with companies like Medora for vaginal dryness. We had companies like Future Family that I really like, because everybody says that, the fertility space, is already very crowded, and you mentioned that. And, it's pretty much a space that is crowded, and it's true. But, there's always space for disruption. And one of the things that I like about Future Family is actually that they're disrupting the fertility space through fintech. One of the reasons that people don't access to more fertility services is because financial reasons. That's the main stopper. And the fact that Future Family could put together a concierge service where you can pay for a membership and you can afford to do as many treatments as you need to have, when many families have to stop at the first treatment if it doesn't work, or the second one, has been changing access to fertility for many, many families. So there's still plenty of ways to disrupt. And I could, give you so many great examples of companies we've invested in, but I want to make sure we get to questions. I really need to stop. So
you're very much like me. I can when I start talking about FemTech, I just can't stop it.
That's the thing, I can talk about FemTech companies we've invested in forever. Like Prime Genomics is another one, and I'll stop. It's a breast cancer test with saliva, so that women don't have to radiate their breasts. So many amazing things.
Yes. So I actually interviewed Faz on my FemTech Focus podcast, and he was speaking about the Portfolia FemTech Fund, and he said that he was really always hoping to see a deal around menstrual pain. How do you relieve menstrual pain that isn't just aspirin? I wanted to ask you, is there a certain deal that you kept wanting to see but haven't seen yet?
Well, that's, I think it's funny when you say that is always about like when you see a deal and it's like, well, I've never seen a deal like this before, you realize that you were missing it. So I've seen a lot of deals regarding menstrual leaking, but in terms of pain, we never saw anything specific to menstrual pain, but we invested in a company called Sunnah. Okay, that is actually to prevent any kind of pain, and it was a Texas Medical Center company. And basically there are those glasses that give certain like pulse lighting to your eyes, and actually they change the brain to be able to process pain in a different way. So instead of having to medicate yourself, use opioids for any kind of chronic pain, you can use Sunnah. So we decided to invest in this company in the FemTech fund because women suffer a lot of pain from many, many things, fibromyalgia, menstrual cramps, so this Sunnah, even though it's really a device that can be used by anybody who has chronic pain, we decided to make it a portfolio company for FemTech because we are the ones that I really believe we endure a lot of pain for everything. So that was a way to fight the opioid crisis and all this self-medication that we're doing because we don't have any other chance. But in terms of, I think the menstrual space is also a crowded space in terms of products that are there, and many of them are about the organic tampon and all that. But still, what I believe is that the fundamentals of tampons have never been reviewed. And I was so glad that finally last year I found a deal from Berkeley where these ladies were actually, researching with one of the best fluid engineers in Berkeley, who had always worked in oil and gas and many other places, to actually design a new tampon in a different way that would prevent leaking, because I think we've been talking a lot about the materials of the tampon and to make sure that they were less damaging. But, the basic design of a tampon has never been revisited. It's like the same thing as we've never created a device to prevent tearing in the birth canal. So those things, when it's very funny because at the end, there's always a male engineer, like in this tampon company or for Materna. When you put men to think about women's problems, because they have all the background in engineering, that's when we have the best of both worlds. And that's one of the things that I wanted to point out, that sometimes the physics of everything are the real important part of the solution. And the rest is only feel good. And I really like when we all get our brains together and try to solve women's problems.
Definitely. So one of the biggest issues I know founders tell me about in FemTech is that, they go to the investor and they say, I am targeting an untapped $10 billion market. And the investor says, how have I never heard of this untapped $10 billion market? And so one of the things I'm passionate about is how do we educate investors and incite FOMO, fear of missing out, right? So do you have some stories of exits or return on investment from FemTech? And, how do we get more investors excited about putting money into this very lucrative market?
So in terms of exits in FemTech, I think there's a lot of great apparel, of course, Spanx is one of them, right? Where we are actually making sure that we look good, but also it's good for our health to wear Spanx. But I think for more in the fertility space or the ones that I've seen, I think it's been pretty early. The one that we've invested in that is the one closest to exit that I've seen is a company that I'm very proud of. And I think 4 different Portfolia funds have invested in them. So the company is called Maven, and they're actually at a Series C, okay? So, and Sequoia, which is the best performing and one of the most famous VC funds in the world because they've always outperformed in every single fund, and that's not the case for many VCs, is the lead investor. So that says a lot. It also says a lot, like such small funds like Portfolia, that many of them are not bigger than 7 million, are able to enter in that kind of a raise, Series C. And that was only possible because companies and investors like Sequoia and companies like Maven believe that we are a sort of we are not like an investor that is only for the money, but also a strategic investor, which is the power of our network can really change the fate of many of the companies. Because in the Portfolia network, we have around, I would say, like 40% or more of people who are in the healthcare space. Mm-hmm. So that's something that is really amazing. So Maven is actually a platform for women health. Okay, so they work with big companies in terms of benefits so that women can have access to all kind of women health related services. So not only for childbirth, but also for, any kind of women health related issues. So they can have their online platform where they can access telehealth, they can access the right doctors, everything. So many companies are realizing that having access to these specific services for women are extremely important and prevent absenteeism and many other things. So Maven has already reached, I don't know how many people they have tapped already in terms of their services through big companies. But now one of the things they need the money for is because they're going to tap the Medicare market. And that's why the Rising America Funding Portfolio was very interested, because the Medicare market is really where a lot of the underserved communities are. Yeah. And for Maven Health, they're thinking about IPO. That's their exit strategy. So it will be the first ever female and women health company that's targeting IPO. So we are on Series C. I think the next stage will be the IPO, and we couldn't be prouder to be in this kind of company. So I think once we get an IPO for a women health company, a FemTech company, that's when people are going to realize the huge market it is.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited to get our attendees' questions. And to all of those listening, I just want to orient you to the types of questions, that you should be asking. Juliana here is a very experienced investor. I've known Juliana for a few years now. I mean, more than a few. And, I continue to learn more tidbits about her and how she has invested and traveled the world and very involved in the FemTech community. And so please, get authentic, get vulnerable, ask your questions around fundraising and FemTech, because Juliana and I would love to hear them. Tret, are you going to upload a question for us?
Yes, we're ready to take questions.
I'm sorry, what?
We are ready.
We're ready.
All right. Oh, there we go. This one's from Rachel. My question is, what are some tactics you use to relate to male investors who may not connect with the problems we're trying to solve on the female health side?
So I think the first one is to, stop assuming they're not interested, because I think we are sometimes our worst enemy, because we are ashamed to talk about these things. That's when we don't show it to male investors. And, I still remember, we also presented Joylux to the Houston Angel Network. Joylux is one of the FemTech companies. It's a vaginal rejuvenation medical device. And, a lot of people who are suffering from vaginal dryness and don't want to use any kind of hormone treatment because it's very risky for any kind of cancers, they decide to use this pulse light, that medical device. And of course, when you go and have a picture of that and you come with a product to pitch, you start getting giggles in the room, and that's what you get when men see this kind of device that reminds them of other devices, and you have the giggling. But the funnily enough is that when you start talking business, you start talking about the market opportunity, you start talking about your sales, the giggling stop, and actually those who were giggling first end up investing. So it's always the same thing, it's about going through that first phase of discomfort or shame or giggling, or the fact that you've never seen a vagina on a slide, or a medical device that is for your vagina, or things like that, and suddenly they get it. It's not that difficult, so sometimes I think it's more ourselves just stopping ourselves from making that leap of faith, saying like, it's just about education. It's just about awareness. And everybody has a mom. And nobody is like, oh, I didn't know that you tore when you gave birth to me, or, So I think those things, demystifying and making sure that those are no longer taboo is the first phase. And at the end of the day, it's a good product, it's a good market, and it's just about pushing it out there.
Yeah. Our next question is, I was told not to put a picture of a women breastfeeding in my pitch deck for breastfeeding apparel brand. So obviously your product is very much about the breast. So when told not to put the woman breastfeeding, how hard should we push back to stand up to use the actual woman's body in our desks?
Well, that's a great question. And Joylux started, I had a lot of the same problems you're mentioning, and Facebook actually banned their advertising, okay? Because Joylux went two routes. One, the medical device route, but also they went from, a non-FDA approved device that, they were only, instead of making the claims they were making with a medical device, could be in the market earlier and would have the same benefits without funding them. So they had great traction in, Canadian TV, home channels, all that. And, people were like, well, let's start doing the same thing in the US, right? With Facebook. And suddenly all their, advertising was banned because they thought they were like sexual toys and all that. And it's like, so they had to fight back. It's like, we are not a sex toy. We are a FemTech product, and women actually need it. So I agree. Sometimes, Anna, I would say sometimes you need to pick your battles, okay? And the same way this person I told you about didn't want to put the picture that was like an ultrasound picture. So it was black and white of a vagina, a healthy one and a torn one, because he couldn't stand the vision of a vagina. Still, the vagina picture was there. So you need to know which investors are ready to see a picture of a vagina. That would be an ultrasound picture. And which ones are not. I would say the more you're trying to depersonalize everything and you're thinking more like as a product feature instead of like, I would say, a message that you're trying to send, breastfeeding is always up for debate, public breastfeeding. And that's something that maybe you don't want to get or may distract from the benefits of your product, because some people are going to be very pro breastfeeding in public. Some people are going to be very against. But if you can still show a breast, but it's part of the mechanics of the product, like, this is how you see, or you don't see the breast when you're breastfeeding with an oral product or not, then, it becomes more about the product description than about a statement, that you are pro breastfeeding and pro breastfeeding in public. Some people might feel like, put off by that and might be stopping listening to it. So I guess that's what I would say. And that's what we try to do with the vagina picture. Like, this is the picture of, the problem, and it's not like a picture of a vagina, because for the sake of having a picture of a vagina there.
Yeah. Do you think that they should maintain that photo? Because if the people who check out, that they're up there like, I don't want to see, oh my God, I can't believe they're showing a picture of breastfeeding on the slide deck. Do you think that that's an okay elimination of investors that you actually aren't interested in?
It really depends on, I think there's a lot of people who need a softer entry to think like an education. And if you start thinking about first, like the opportunity more than the statement and what you really believe in and you're passionate about. So no, I wouldn't take the slide out, but maybe I would put it at the end. Like, this is what I believe. This is my Orle vision. But at the beginning, it's like a full like product pitch and a full like investment pitch. And at the end, this is our bigger vision. So at least if there's someone who might be put off by that slide, maybe you can convince that person through the pitch, and then you still make your statement there that this is, you created this company because you have certain beliefs and certain values, and you shouldn't negotiate on that. You should still, those would be your non-negotiables, but still maybe there's some people who are on the fence, and you can convert while you're doing your pitch. So that's what I would do.
I love that. That's a great compromise. Tret, what's our next question? This one comes from Eliza. Thank you for this. I'm currently working on a sexual health startup, and I was wondering if you could give some advice for student founders on how to legitimize themselves to investors.
Well, that's, I guess, it comes a little bit to the answer that I was trying to give Anna with Orle. At the end of the day, sexual health is one of the most important things. And I think, as everything, you need to pass the discomfort barrier and talk about a real market. So the more objective you are about data, and data that proves that there's a real need, that there's a real market, that there's a real pain, then everything can be talked about. So the more professional you look like, the more on top of your data and your numbers you look like, and you can describe the market opportunity, the benefits. I think that's when you legitimize the whole thing, and people can pass the barriers of misconceptions or assumptions and all those things that might prevent them from being interested in a sexual health company.
Love it. How do you define FemTech?
So Fem is women, tech is technology, but I think, as we mentioned before, it could be as vague as, things that are also affecting women in a bigger way, like osteoporosis, for example. We invested in a medical device that was helping prevent osteoporosis. And that's something that, men can also have, but we still believe that women are more affected in this kind of diseases and problems. One of the FemTech companies we invested in, Sandstone Diagnostics, is actually a tracker for sperm quality. And we invested as a FemTech product. Why? Because fertility is an issue that, even though it affects both male and female are taking care of that. So they are the ones that are pursuing the, fertility services, in terms of anything related to it. But in general, the problem is that more often than not, the fertility problems that the couple have are also a male problem. And it's only when the female has done every single test that could be done that is like, okay, the men are there faced with a problem and the stigma that, oh, it might be me after all. Okay, so there's a lot of stigma of going to any kind of clinic to see if, your sperm is healthy enough. It's also pretty degrading to be in these rooms where you have to lay a sample there. And so that's why this Sandstone Diagnostic fertility tracker was a sort of centrifuge that's linked to an app. And you can actually track your sperm quality on a daily, weekly basis. And sperm quality is also depending a lot on your way of life, how you eat, how you rest, how you do exercise. So you can see how the quality actually improves depending on, how you change your lifestyle. So these are things that are totally for men, but, at the end of the day, I think women are the ones living the fertility journey. are in charge of it. We actually make 80% of any purchase decision anyway. So we need to make sure that we invest in the things we want to see in the market. So for me, FemTech is anything a woman wants to see in the market, and it's not there yet because men are the ones investing in products, and because men don't know the kind of problems we have because they are female related. We need to make sure that first we voice them, and then we make them aware that there's an opportunity there, and then we invest in them. So that's what I would say.
I loved Springboard Enterprises just launched women's.health website, and it's a coalition of resources for women's health. And they define FemTech as things that solely, disproportionately, or differently affect women. And so, you know, when I first got into FemTech, I thought, well, it's just about periods. It's just about pregnancy. It's just the things that are for anatomical women that we only experience. And what I've come to learn is FemTech includes, you know, headaches that disproportionately affect women over men. It includes Alzheimer's, disproportionately affects women over men. Heart attacks, women show different signs. Men have more heart attacks, but when women have a heart attack, the symptoms are different, right? And then lastly, you know, that I've actually been in really, really amazing dialogues around is FemTech female health, you know, does it also cross over into women's health if you identify as a woman but do not have a uterus? And so sometimes FemTech is also just the female, the woman's experience in the world. Right. And like, you can innovate how a woman experiences her life, regardless of what is in her underwear. Right. Like, that is also FemTech. And so, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm always like, this is a new industry. You know, the community should also be telling us what it is.
Definitely.
Right.
We're the ones defining it because we saw a need to create that term, and we're still exploring what the term can be.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's so exciting. I love it. We're the beginning.
And I'm glad to say that Portfolia was the first ever to have a specific FemTech fund. And now we're going to raise the second one because it was totally successful.
Yes.
And I hope, you know, there's more funds out there or more investors out there who want to embark on the FemTech journey. And I know, Brittany, you're one of them. So,
so exciting. Tret, what's next on deck? How do you see COVID changing the way we address women's health in the future?
So one of the things that COVID is doing is everything is becoming virtual. And I think for women, this is one of the best things that could happen because, as I mentioned before, we're always the one who have to sacrifice our lives, our working lives, our career when there's some kid who's sick, when there's some elderly that we need to care for. So, you know, we always need to take days off to go to any kind of doctor appointment for all these people we have to care for. And the fact that now things with COVID are being, you know, all remotely facilitated is easing a lot of this struggle that, you know, women had to take care of. And also the fact that men have to be there witnessing everything we have to juggle day in and day out, and they have to be part of that solution because we have to be compromising and make sure we all get to do what we have to do on a daily basis is also a great part of what could be a solution. So I think we're never going to come back. You know, these are services that were created, and people sometimes didn't see the need at the beginning, but now I think it's going to become part of a new normal. So all of these things I think are going to be much more beneficial to women and FemTech. Because we really are the ones who have been sacrificing our time, and every time there was one person had to be the one taking the time off, it was always up to us to do it.
Yeah, most recent statistic I heard from UCSF, their OB-GYN clinic for pregnant women, they used to only do less than 6% of their appointments via telehealth. And now they're doing close to 70% of their appointments using telehealth. And guess what? Everyone loves it. The doctors are like, hey, this is great. I just, you know, like, she's got a blood pressure machine. She's got an app. Like, we could just check. She doesn't need to come in. And the patients actually feel super empowered too, because, you know, they're not, maybe they don't have a car and they have had to take the bus in or take off of work or have another child be babysat. And so the telehealth thing is definitely blowing up. And I also think working from home is very, very empowering for women, you
Let
know.
me tell you, I've never felt better because
Mhm.
I always felt that I had to pretend I didn't have kids when I was working, you know, that I was like, I didn't have kids, so I couldn't talk about the fact that my kid was sick or that I had to step out because my little one had a function or something, you know. And it was like, really, I was like, I need to feel like I'm a man, you know, and suddenly it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And actually people are finally realizing, oh my goodness, she's still managing her job with 2 kids at home at such a, you know, low age. And suddenly they realize that we are not all the same and that we are, women in general are at a disadvantage at the workplace. So this is great. I think it's lifting a lot of veils up that even ourselves try to put, you know, because we didn't want to feel that, you know, we couldn't do the job, and
Yeah.
we're like hiding a lot of the things we had to do just to be considered more professional and more seriously.
Yeah. Silver linings, right? Silver
Always,
linings.
always.
There's another silver lining. I don't see this coming up yet in the questions, but I'm just going to go for it. You know, we're experiencing a time of great emotional turmoil over, you know, the disproportionate killing of Black men and Black women.
Mm-hmm.
And I have really taken this opportunity through FemTech Focus to highlight, you know, we're a new company, so we shouldn't be speaking on politics just yet. But what we can do and what we should speak to is the disproportionate in, you know, the disparities in Black women's healthcare, right?
Yeah.
And so what do you think about, you know, so COVID is this horrible thing. Literally millions of people have died. And we're seeing like, well, thank God there's telehealth is coming up for women and working from home is coming for women. And so do you see anything happening like this horrible, you know, like thing that hopefully we're finally addressing, reforming the police, but like, what do you see in terms of like that improving Black women's health? Do you see that might happen?
So what I like about COVID is that, as I mentioned before, it's lifting all the veils. And of course, one of them is like the disparities between men and women. But another one, the obvious one, is how COVID is affecting much more African American. And it's not because they're different in any kind of biology. It's just because the kind of work they have to do, you know, the kind of healthcare that services that they don't have. So we're always, and I'm also Latina, so the Latina also is the same kind of problems. You know, Latino and African American are the ones that are facing those problems the most. And I think first of all, you know, there's this sense that, you know, helplessness a little bit, you know. It's like we strive to make ends meet, and the Latino and African American markets have been like really growing at a huge pace for many products, but still the basics, the access to healthcare, the access to education are not there. And one of the things we've been doing with Rising America and the Kauffman Fellows, we've been trying to put a series of programs on how we can change things and make sure we invest more in African American and Latinx, because we really believe that, you know, there's a huge need for equality, and to make sure that, you know, these problems, you know, don't seem like they don't have a solution, because they do. And now feeling bad about all these things that are horrible things that are happening in the US and even around the world is not enough. You know, making a statement like, oh, we're so sorry, it's not enough. It doesn't cut it. You know, you need to actively become anti-racist. And the only way to actively demonstrate that you are anti-racist is actually two ways. Either you hire or you wire. And when you wire, that means that you need to start investing in African American, in minorities, you know. So that's one of the things, you know, when the Angel Capital Association wanted to put a statement of, you know, all the things that happened with George Floyd and everything. I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is nice, but it's not enough. It no longer cuts it, you know. It's a call to action. And now, basically, if you don't act, that's when you're going to be, you know, called for. It's like, you know, feeling sympathetic is no longer cutting it. And the call to action is being like really overwhelming. And we've seen a huge uproar of interest now in the Rising America Fund for Portfolia, because people are like, things really need to change, and the only way they can change is by empowering entrepreneurs who are tackling those problems. The problem is that African American don't have equal access to anything, Latino the same thing, and we need to make sure that we start investing in companies that are trying to fix those problems.
Yeah, that's what I love FemTech, because there's also a lot of, the whole thing is social impact movement, but you can have a FemTech company that specifically addresses a certain, underrepresented group, or, a group experiencing discrimination. And so that's FemTech too. Tret, what's our next question? Before I start fundraising, my goal is to bring on board a successful board member to guide me through the success. How do I find these board members, and what's the best way to get a successful person brought onto the board? So how do you recruit a strong board?
One of the things to have a strong board is to include diversity. And now you see that in California, there's a new law where you need to have diverse board members, and things are going to change. And once you have a diverse board, those diverse members are going to start figuring out what's wrong with your company, okay? And that's when you're going to start fundraising, because there's numbers out there that say that 35% more ROI is achieved for investments that have a diverse group of funders. Mm-hmm. So this is real business. And if you want to start fundraising in FemTech or in any other company, I think the diversity in your board has to be there. And if you talk about where to look for those diverse board members, I think there's a lot of initiatives out there for board-ready women, diverse board members. Portfolia has a database or around 600 different women out there and men who are caring for diversity. There's many other, if you go to Latinx VC, there's a lot of posting out there for Latino investors and funders who are great. There's Hello Alice that is also there for diverse founders and board members. There's many other associations and nonprofits that are trying to tackle the problem of non-diversity in boards.
Love it. Tret, hit us. Tret, how can the men in the startup community support FemTech entrepreneurs and the industry as well?
Men are more important than ever, and I think this cannot work without men. And that's one of the things I like about Portfolia. Portfolia is predominantly women, but there's a lot of men there, and they are the best champions we can get. We have a lot of couples who invest with us. We have a lot of father-daughter teams. And actually, because everything is virtual in Portfolia, some of them use that as a bonding experience because they're in different parts of the world or the US. And, I think, as I mentioned before, many of the problems that are FemTech problems, men have been solving them for ages. So it's more about, I think if you include a man in any FemTech related problem, the solution is going to be bigger, better, and bolder. There was a lady who's from France who was like a really funny lady who was on TV, and she described what a stroller would be if the baby stroller had been invented by men, and basically she made like a beeper, like for the nicest car you could get, and the stroller would just fold itself up and become like this big, and then the man would take it and go and work, and it's true. I think that men, when they are motivated, they are amazing at designing things. It's just about finding the right problems to help us design it with, and I really believe that if men were to put their heads in solving like the stroller problem and many other problems, they will be so sleek and so nice. So you are the biggest champions. And in Portfolia, we're not only investing in women-led companies, we are investing in men-led companies. And one of our biggest exits was actually AutoSense, which was led by 4 nerds who said, we are aware that we need diversity, but we can't find it because we are nerds and we don't socialize. We don't know any cool women. But that's why we want you to invest in us so that you can bring us the diversity we need. And we invested in them, and we brought the CFO, the women CFO, who led them to exit in less than 1 year. So that's how diversity really pays.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on FemTech is not female founder only, because how many women help develop Viagra? Not just men, women help develop Viagra. And so
opportunity, that's it. It's not about women only investing or investing only in women-led companies.
No, it's
only
not
an area of health.
Yes. And, I do meet male founders in FemTech, and, it's funny how we have, female founders struggle to get the respect from investors. But my experience talking to male founders of FemTech companies, they are constantly challenged by investors asking them, why don't you have a female co-founder? And it drives me insane, because what that question means is, why are you a man caring about women's endometriosis? That's weird. That's strange. Only women care about their own uterus. And it's like, no, men are allowed to care about uteruses too. They should care about uteruses, because we don't just birth women, we birth men, right? Yeah. We don't just take care or partner with other women. We work with men and all genders. And, something that our tagline at FemTech Focus is, improve women's health and wellness, improve everyone's health and wellness, because you improve her work performance, you improve the family, you improve the economy, it's everything, And so for Tret, for, how do men get involved? It's literally, how can you not get involved? Like, it's literally everything. Start it, join it, talk about it. I suggest to men that say, wow, Britt, this movement's really cool. What can I do? And I suggest talk about periods with your bros. Yeah. Like, it's going to be super weird at first, but like, men need to start talking about menstruation too.
It's a lot about demystifying, that's for sure.
Yes. Sorry. Obviously very passionate about this. Tret, do we have any other questions? Oh yeah, here we go. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, you can join me on LinkedIn. And I'm also a Capital Factory mentor, so I'm on Union too. You can book office hours with me. Not a problem. I'm always trying to answer the requests, but there are many. So sometimes I'm not the best at being like on time. But if you insist, and I'm totally okay with funders insisting, I think that's a very cool thing. A very cool trait to have, persistence. So I'll make sure we can talk.
Yeah. And for me, you can follow me on LinkedIn, and also follow our podcast if you're enjoying this conversation. FemTech Focus is a great podcast about this topic. Sorry, Tret, go ahead. For Morgan, which verticals in FemTech do you think are the most interesting after COVID-19?
Well, of course, anything that has to do with remote health, are amazing. For example, I told you about Sandstone Diagnostics and the fact that they had this fertility tracker for male sperm. They realized that with the same machine, with the same small centrifuge, they could do so many things like split blood and plasma and use it for any kind of point of care diagnosis. So now more than ever, when we're going to have remote clinical trials and you name it, you need this kind of diagnostic devices that you don't have to go to a lab to treat samples, everything. And so the company suddenly got a lot of interest from, drug development companies that needed to try and do their trials at home, and many other things that were not related only to sperm. So sometimes COVID is a blessing in disguise for some of these companies. So definitely anything that has to do with remote health, and with remote diagnostics, because now there's a lot of wearables too. I really believe that we're going to start tracking our health more and more with wearables, and they're going to be in prevention mode also, so that we're going to get signals of many sicknesses beforehand, because we're going to be tracking many more things as a way to prevent. And I think prevention is one of the things that can also help the healthcare system a lot more, incurring less expenses. So things can really get better because of that.
Absolutely. Do you, as a FemTech investor, sorry, my mind totally blanked. I got it now. So As a FemTech investor, do you wish there was more resources specifically for FemTech companies? Like, there's a real lack in FemTech accelerators or FemTech mentor programs or meetup groups. And does that worry you at all as a FemTech investor? Or what do you think about it?
I think the fact that we're putting the FemTech word out there is already a huge thing. So things like your podcast, or the fact that Portfolia has a FemTech fund, that the University of Houston had their FemTech Innovation Challenge.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, I have my water bottle here. So all these things are really important, because then people are like asking the question, why is FemTech? And that opens a lot of possibilities, So I think the fact that a name was created for it is already a huge plus. And I think it's only about time. We've started with funds and a podcast, but I know that the Pincubator is there, that, of course, there's not everything is about FemTech, but there's a very strong FemTech component. So there's, I think there's going to be more and more opportunities. Springboard, of course, is putting together, FemTech movement too, and maybe at some point it would become a cohort for their virtual acceleration program. So there's definitely a sense that there's an opportunity there, and people are starting to figure out ways to tap into that.
That's amazing. Well, I think we've serviced all of our questions. Is there any final comments, Juliana, that you want to say? I know we had, close to 100 registrants. I know a lot of them are founders of FemTech companies. So do you have any parting words for them before we tune out today?
So I think it's about daring to speak about all these things out in the open, because even when I lost my two babies, I was very open about my struggle. And I realized that when I talk openly about it, many other women and many other couples told me, oh, we've gone through the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's actually very, very liberating to talk about things and be the first one to put it out there. And suddenly you realize that so many others face the same struggle. So I think that's one of the things about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are about being brave. More than anything, you need to be the bravest, you need to be the boldest. So they're speaking out in the open about all these things, and you'll see that there's many more people than you ever thought of that have endured the same problems. And that's where they will see an opportunity, because if they don't see the extent of the problem, they will never see the opportunity.
That's right. And if anyone needs a pep talk, obviously Juliana and I are very excited about it and would love to encourage you and support you and motivate you. You are working on really important innovations, really, really important. Like, women's lives are counting on it. So keep going, even when it's hard. Founder life is so hard. It's so hard, but it's worth it. So Juliana, thank you so much for your time today. You are amazing. Always looking up to you. And I love talking about FemTech. So thank you so much for your time today.
Totally honored to be here. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Tret, is there any closing words that we need to do?
Nope, that's it. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, follow us on LinkedIn. See y'all later. Keep innovating. Bye.